Chapter 4, Amorous Surprise Attack. A Ghost. Nicole gave a short shriek and immediately jumped back. Sparks started jumping out of her fingertips. She was fully on the alert with the sudden appearance of the man on the ground. Rody's face was full of dust, his back ached and his whole body felt numb. Damn. I hope my back is not broken. Rody felt wronged. It was not his fault. If anyone was to be blamed, it was the girl's fault. Did she not know she was wearing a nightgown? The aristocratic girl was wearing a nightgown. The upper front part was undone and left really loose. The worst part was that Rody was hanging onto the beam right above her, as the gown did not cover her entire chest. He could see everything there. Our swordsman was a young virgin. He had never before experienced such temptation, especially since the girl had earlier cried and messed up her clothes even more. Even if Rody was a saint, after accidentally seeing the girl's exposed chest, he would falter. His surprise at the sight made him loosen his grip, resulting in his fall. "Who are you?" Nicole screamed. Even if she were more powerful, she was after all still just a young girl. The sudden appearance of a mysterious man in the middle of the night in a dark room had gripped her heart with fear, not to mention the fact that the man looked menacing with a yin-yang face. Rody's mind was a bit dizzy. He could not help but stare at Nicole's chest, his eyes blurred. Nicole immediately understood the meaning of his gaze, along with the realization that he was above her earlier and her robes were loose. It was obvious that while she had been unaware, he had been looking at her exposed chest and thus had violated her modesty. Nicole felt embarrassed and angry at the same time. With rage, she pointed at the other party. The surrounding airflow abruptly became violent. Nicole's blonde hair started to flutter. Her face was gloomy and her eyes glowed. Looking at the noble girl's index finger pointing at him, the drowsy Rody was jolted wide awake. He was truly scared out of his wits when he saw the lightning bolt shooting out from her finger. In desperation, he let out a cry and struck his palm at her neck. His mind was clear that he only had one chance. Against such a powerful magician, he only had hope in close quarters combat. However, he did not use his full strength. This was because the girl was too beautiful and he could not bear to hurt her. Unfortunately, he was not fast enough. Just as Rody's hand was about to hit her, before he could even touch her neck, he felt like his chest was hit by a sledgehammer. His body felt like it was falling apart. Nicole saw her lightning bolt hit the strange man squarely in the chest, but at the same time, she also felt a severe pain at her neck as she lost consciousness. Rody felt pain throughout his body and he could barely stand. Fortunately, his attack struck the girl accurately and she should be out cold for a while. Rody knew his attack worked because he had previously used the same technique on a sturdy fellow while sparring in class. That fellow was unconscious for a full hour. This poor girl, hopefully, she is not injured. Rody leaned over to observe the girl. His mouth felt dry the moment he saw her. The girl was indeed unconscious, as her whole body was limp on the floor. The hem of her nightrobe was gently raised and it exposed her legs and ankles. Rody's eyes moved towards her chest as her nightrobe barely covered her bosom. As he was much closer to her now, the sight became clearer. Rody was about to run, however, he had a sudden strange thought. Such a beautiful and defenseless girl. Rody swallowed hard and mumbled to himself, "If I kiss her now, nobody would know, right?" With his heart taking over, Rody involuntarily leaned down to take advantage of Nicole. His eyes grew wide and his breathing also got heavier. His heart felt like it would jump out of his mouth. In a daze, Rody's lips touched a soft object. It had a trace of sweetness. That feeling almost stopped his heart. Unfortunately, the young virgin boy did not have the chance to savor the experience of his first kiss further, as her eyes suddenly opened in close proximity. Nicole had drowsily felt someone pressing into her face and opened her eyes. What she saw almost scared her to death as she saw that guy pressing his yin-yang face onto hers. That guy was even kissing her. The noble girl bit her teeth down in reflex. Rody screamed and backed away. He reached out to touch his mouth but was immediately aware of the salty taste. His mouth had been bitten and blood flowed into his mouth. Rody could even feel the teeth marks on his upper lip. Luckily, Nicole, in a panic, had not given her full effort. Otherwise, Rody would be the first warrior ever who got his lips bitten off during his first kiss. Bastard. Nicole's face was red as if it was bleeding. Her expression was full of panic, anger, and humiliation. Damn it. This bastard actually dared to take advantage of me. It doesn't matter if he is a person or a ghost. he should die 10,000 times. In her distressed state, she did not think about whether it was even possible for a ghost to die again, much less 10,000 times. The air velocity became more rapid and a mass of air concentrated into a tornado with faint sounds of thunder. Nicole exclaimed, "Die!" A white light appeared from Nicole's index finger and struck Rody's body. Rody had expected to be hurled flying by the strike. However, after being hit by the white light this time, he was not thrown off. His whole body was jolted as though it was hit by an invisible hammer. After that, he could not move a muscle and his entire body felt numb. The white light that shot towards Rody formed into a ring. Rody was encircled inside the ring. Nicole waved her hand and Rody flew, crashing hard into the wall with another wave. Rody hit the other side of the wall. The wooden sheds were damaged by the impact from his body. The solid wood almost broke Rody's back. A few small pieces of wood punctured his clothes and his body. Rody felt extreme pain and had cold sweat, but he could not even scream. Nicole's fingers waved again. This time, the air gripped Rody and pinched him hard like an invisible hand before bashing him around the walls a little more. Although Rody was tough, he could not withstand the constant beating and had started to run out of breath. Fortunately, Nicole finally stopped with a gentle flick. She crashed Rody onto the ground face first. His nose bled. Rody was hurt so badly he had actually fainted. However, he woke up again when he fell to the ground. Although his nose was broken, a different kind of ache appeared. The blood from his nose and tears in his eyes all started to flow. However, he did not dare to move and continued to lie down quietly on the floor. If the scary woman knew that he had not died, she might give him a dozen more beatings. Rody was not an idiot. He knew the principle of not fighting when the odds are against him. Nicole was breathless as her chest heaved. She gnashed her teeth and asked, "Who are you?" As she spoke, her finger was still pointing towards Rody on the ground. Damn it, when she remembered about this ghost man's frivolousness, Nicole could not wait to tear him into pieces. However, the person on the ground did not give any reaction. Was he dead? Or did he faint after being hit? Nicole carefully walked 2 steps forward, alert and vigilant. Her wonderful eyes did not relax as she looked at the guy on the ground. Suddenly, Rody's hands were raised. A handful of mixed straw and dust flew towards Nicole's face. Although Nicole was a master magician, she did not have much hands-on fighting experience, not to mention that a noble lady would not have witnessed this type of tactic before. Hastily, she screamed and closed her eyes even before she could jump out of the way. The poor girl, who despite her strength, did not have any combat experience. For a magician or a warrior, closing your eyes was a fatal mistake. Although Rody was just a student, he was a commoner and had a lot of experience with fighting in the streets. You might say that he was very skillful. The girl screamed and closed her eyes, but she could still feel the dust and straw on her body in the heat of the moment. She moaned about dirtying her beautiful face and nightgown, but her thoughts could not progress much further. Rody's palm once again struck her neck and Nicole collapsed. This time, Rody's strike was heavier. His bleeding lips and the bruises in his body gave him plenty of lessons. Rody carefully walked around Nicole and gently prodded her with his foot to make sure she had truly fainted. Rody was finally relieved. However, he tensed up. 2 people had just been fighting here and had caused some ruckus. Only God knew whether the bodyguards and servants were roused. Rody lost his desire for intimacy. He needed to leave quickly. At this time, there was a voice outside the horse shed. "Wonderful! Wonderful! Truly beautiful!" That person, clapping his hands, leisurely walked in alone.